In Denmark, there are forest kindergartens where 4-year-olds are handed real knives, not plastic ones, real, sharp carving knives, and they're taught, carefully, deliberately, to whittle wood with them. If your first reaction to that sentence was something close to alarm, you're not alone, and you're not wrong to feel that way. But there's an entire body of academic research behind why Nordic educators do this on purpose, and it might be the single most counterintuitive parenting habit on this entire channel. And just before we get into it today, I'd like to ask you for a quick favor. If you enjoy the videos, please consider subscribing. It's a quick, easy, and free way of supporting the channel, and it helps out more than you know, so thank you. So today, we're going deep into the science of Nordic independence, and by the end of this video, that opening sentence is going to make a lot more sense than it does right now. There's a Norwegian researcher named Ellen Sandseter, a professor at Queen Maud University College in Trondheim, who has spent much of her career studying exactly this question. Why do Nordic children engage in play that looks, to outside observers, genuinely dangerous? And what actually happens to kids who grow up doing it? Her research identified 6 specific categories of what she calls risky play, and once you hear them, you'll start noticing which ones are completely normal in Nordic childhoods and almost entirely absent from a lot of childhoods elsewhere. Category 1. Play at great heights. Climbing trees, tall playground structures, anything that lets a child get high enough to feel real exhilaration and a real, manageable sense of risk. Category 2. Play at high speed. Sledding fast, biking fast, swinging as high and hard as possible. Anything that produces genuine velocity, not the carefully governor-limited version. Category 3. Play with dangerous tools. This is where the whittling knives come in. Real tools, used for a real purpose, under real supervision, but not eliminated from the environment out of blanket caution. Category 4. Play near dangerous elements. Fire, deep water, edges. Controlled exposure to things that carry real consequences if handled carelessly. Category 5. Rough and tumble play. Wrestling, play fighting, physical contact games where kids test strength and boundaries against each other. And Category 6. Maybe the most overlooked one. Play where children can disappear or get lost, exploring an area alone or with peers, entirely out of direct adult sightline for a meaningful stretch of time. Here's what makes Sandseter's research genuinely rigorous rather than just a cultural observation. She and her colleagues have proposed what's called the antiphobic theory of risky play, the idea that children engaging in these 6 categories of play, under reasonable safety conditions, are essentially building an evolved kind of exposure therapy against future anxiety and phobias. A child who's climbed high enough to feel real fear and come down safely, again and again, develops a different relationship with heights than a child who's never been allowed near them at all. And this isn't just theory. A recent cross-cultural study compared Norwegian and Canadian children, ages 7 to 11, using immersive virtual reality playground scenarios that measured risk willingness, how much speed they chose, how high they climbed, how much time they spent in genuinely risky zones. The Norwegian children showed significantly higher risk willingness than the Canadian children. And in a separate part of the same study, greater risk willingness in play actually predicted better risk management in a simulated pedestrian road crossing task. In other words, the kids who were more comfortable taking managed risks during play were also better, not worse, at judging real risk in a completely different context. That finding is worth sitting with, because it directly contradicts the instinct most protective parenting is built on, the assumption that less exposure to risk produces safer kids. The Norwegian data suggests something closer to the opposite. Controlled, repeated exposure to manageable risk during childhood play appears to build better risk judgment overall, not worse. This connects to something we've touched on in earlier videos about Nordic outdoor kindergartens, where children spend up to 80% of their day outside, in all weather, year-round. That's not just about fresh air and vitamin D. It's the delivery mechanism for almost all 6 of Sandseter's categories simultaneously. You can't climb real trees indoors. You can't build a fire in a classroom. You can't disappear into the woods with friends inside 4 walls with an adult in every room. So what does this actually look like day to day? A Norwegian 5-year-old climbing high enough into a tree that an anxious observer might want to intervene, while a teacher nearby watches, ready to help but not preventing the climb itself. A Danish 4-year-old carefully drawing a knife blade away from their own body while carving a stick, under direct supervision from an adult who's taught them the specific technique. A group of Finnish children walking themselves to school, unsupervised, starting as young as 7, because the culture and the infrastructure both assume this is developmentally appropriate rather than dangerously permissive. None of this is recklessness. It's the opposite of recklessness, actually, when you look at how it's structured. Every one of these activities happens with real supervision, real teaching of technique beforehand, and real institutional experience in judging what a specific child, at a specific developmental stage, is actually ready for. The knife isn't handed to a 4-year-old with no instruction and a shrug. It's handed over after careful teaching, in a controlled setting, by adults trained specifically in how to do this safely. The tree climbing isn't unsupervised abandonment. It's supervision that intervenes for genuine danger and stays quiet for manageable risk, which is a much harder skill for an adult to practice than simply saying no to everything. That distinction between recklessness and structured risk is really the entire philosophy in one sentence. The goal was never to remove supervision. It was to redefine what supervision is actually protecting against, and to stop treating every possible scrape, fall, or splinter as a failure of parenting rather than a normal, even valuable part of growing up. To be direct about this, since it matters. This video is describing a researched cultural and educational approach, developed and refined by trained early childhood educators over decades. Not a set of instructions to hand your own child a knife tomorrow, without any of the structure, training, or institutional experience that makes it work safely in a Danish forest kindergarten. The value here isn't the specific activities, it's the underlying principle. Manageable, supervised risk, appropriate to a child's actual developmental stage, appears to build better long-term risk judgment than the complete removal of risk ever could. If there's one thing worth taking from all of this, it's permission to loosen the grip slightly, appropriate to your own child, your own judgment, and your own comfort level. Not a leap to knives and fire. Maybe just a slightly higher branch on the climbing structure at the park. A little more distance while they explore. A little more trust that a scraped knee is not evidence that something went wrong. If this changed something for you, subscribing genuinely means a lot. It's how a small channel like this actually grows, and there's more where this came from. And drop a comment. Where's your own line on this? And did anything in this video move it? I read every single one. Och som alltid, vi ses nästa gång.